a year ago, I just was looking for something that, like a glimmer of hope that maybe the stirring inside me telling me that I want more to life can still be true, even though I was like too afraid to dream or hope or kind of let my spirits get up because they had been down for so long.
Welcome to the Women Inspired Podcast, brought to you by Modern Well, a beautiful woman-centered collaborative workspace in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm your host, April Seifert, psychologist, entrepreneur, and self-proclaimed life experience junkie. Each week, I will introduce you to a different woman who is succeeding and inspiring others in one way or another. We'll dive into her story, her successes, failures, and the lessons she has learned along the way, all with the goal of inspiring you to listen to that inner voice who keeps reminding you that there is something you want to take action on. You are so much more capable and powerful than you give yourself credit for. Inside of you is a woman on fire. Let's let her out and see what happens. Here we go. Welcome back to the Women Inspired Podcast. My name is April Seifert, and I am your host. And I am so thrilled that you are joining me for this week's interview, because this week's interview and the woman I am speaking to, they are so near and dear to my heart. And I have been waiting to bring this interview to you for so long, and I'm so excited that the day is finally here. This week, you are going to meet an amazing woman named Courtney Mott, and she is one of the people that I have been working with on a one-on-one basis in a life design capacity. Now, when Courtney came to me about a year ago, she came to me via a mutual acquaintance of ours. The two of them worked together in a capacity, and Courtney was in a really difficult situation in that her work life was very much out of alignment with who she really was. And because of that, that was really bleeding over into her personal life and the way that she was interacting with her spouse and with her kid. And it made for a lot of friction points in her life, or design challenges, as you would call them in the life design. So the thing is, she is one of those people who just has a natural tendency to lead. She has a giant heart in, her desire to help other people. And you can hear that from her. But when it came to, the situation that she was in, she wasn't giving herself enough credit. She's one of those people who is so quick to talk about how amazing somebody else is and to help those people, but she was not willing to give herself the credit that she deserved. So about a year ago, she came to me and we started working together. And what was amazing about it is that, yes, we did a lot of life design work. We did a lot of the, mind mapping work and other sort of, design thinking type activities that I would do with anybody in a life design capacity. But there's a reason why I add the field of psychology onto the top of the work that I do in design thinking when I'm working with people in this way. It's because lots of times we know what we need to do, or we have a pretty good idea that something isn't working. But the reason why we're not taking action, or the reason why we're not pursuing it to try to figure out what we should be doing, is because there's something psychological that is keeping us from moving forward. There is a barrier there. Maybe it's a belief system. Maybe it's an idea of how we think the world should or shouldn't work. Maybe it's an identity thing. In this case, that's what it was. So Courtney and I worked really hard, and you'll hear this in the interview. We worked really hard on her identity around what her self-worth is. So there was a moment when she and I were working together where I said to her, Courtney, fill in the blank of this sentence. I'm the type of person who makes how much money? Like, how much money do you make? Because the thing is, the way that you fill in that sentence, that's pretty much how much money you're going to make. That part of your identity will dictate the types of jobs that you'll go after, the salary that you'll require from them, how much you're willing to settle for, and whether you're willing to settle. That piece of your identity dictates so much when it comes to your earning potential. And in her case, oh my God, her ability level tripled what that number was that she would put in that sentence. And so we worked really hard on the psychological side of things, which completely opened up the rest of her life. And it was awesome to see. So you'll see in this interview how she completely transformed over the course of, the 4 to 5 months that she and I worked together. And then afterward, as she continued to apply the things that we worked on, it has been beautiful to see. Her work life has been transformed. She resigned from her job and she's doing a completely different set of work now in order to earn money. And that has changed the way that she approaches her home life with her spouse and her child. And not only that, there's an amazing piece where we talk about in this interview about a beach vacation that she went on with her friends and what she felt entitled to ask for around the notion of this beach vacation. So please listen for that in this interview, because I was literally like ready to stand up and cheer. I was so excited for her, and I think you will be too. So I really think you're going to love this interview with Courtney Mott. Now, before we get there, I have to say that this interview is brought to you by my absolutely free webinar around life blueprinting. Now, by the time that this episode airs, I will have been doing these webinars for a week and a half, which means you have one and only one chance left to participate in this webinar, and it is tomorrow. If you're listening to this episode the day it drops on Wednesday, January 9th, Thursday, January 10th at 10 a.m. Central Time is your last chance to participate in this webinar if you want to get in on it. The results are coming back from people who have participated in the previous ones over the last week and a half. People have gotten clients. People have made shifts in their morning routine. It has been incredible what people can do by taking 1 hour to be intentional and doing the right type of exercise to start to identify what they're going to change and how. Oh my God, I'm so thrilled. Now I realize not everybody's going to be able to come. You might not be able to come on Thursday at 10 a.m. Central Time. Maybe that doesn't work for your schedule. I'll let a cat out of the bag. I'm going to send out a replay. So if you can't be there, please sign up anyway, because I want everybody to learn this technique. It has been so powerful. I literally cannot hold it back from anybody. So please, please, please sign up anyway, and I will send you the replay, even if you can't be there live. But it's way more fun to be there live because we get to chat with each other, and that's awesome. So I really hope to see you guys there. It has been such a transformational couple of weeks, and I am absolutely thrilled to be offering these life design tools and techniques on a more formal and broader scale. And I can't wait for all of you to take part and start to apply them to your life. All right, you guys, I'm so excited to introduce you to this week's amazing, inspiring woman, Courtney Mott. Courtney, I am so excited that you joined us today for this episode of the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. What an honor. Thanks for having me.
Oh my God. I'm absolutely thrilled to talk to you today, because if there's one person whose story is completely inspirational for people, it's yours. And I can't wait for people to hear the transformation and journey that you've been on over the past year or so. It's just going to be awesome.
It has been awesome, so that's very true.
Yay. Okay, so help us get to know you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into this awesome journey that you've been on.
All right. Well, I grew up in downtown White Bear Lake, and that was an adorable town. I loved my childhood. It was just such a neat area to grow up in. I ended up going to college for my degree in supervisory management. I guess my whole time I've been in my careers, I've always just had this natural ability to lead. And my favorite thing to do is lead people and help other people kind of level up, no matter what that looks like, whether it's getting them into college or helping them get their next job or helping them get in shape. I've had such a wide variety of careers that I went from like running franchises, whether it was pizza or kickboxing, two things that I absolutely love, to being large retail managers, to now figuring my own thing out. And it's just been a wild ride, but one that I would do all over again if it brought me right here.
I love it so much. Okay, so for those listening, Courtney is someone who, I've talked a little bit on the podcast about how over the last couple of years, there have been a few people who I've worked with on a one-on-one basis around the concepts of life design and have really started, really it was people like you who helped me hone some of the tools and techniques and things that I've been putting together. And so, Courtney, I would love, as I mentioned, your story is just so incredible. And I'm wondering if you would mind chatting with us a bit about where you were at, say, a year ago, or it's probably about a year now, a year ago, before we started working together. You came to, our working relationship with in a really interesting situation. And I'm hoping you can just describe that for people as to where you were in the beginning.
Yeah. Part of me, it's hard to remember that, even though it was a year ago, because there's been so much growth and I've let a lot of that part of me go, that if I'm not hitting something head on, just ask a question. So
totally.
I think the journey truly goes back a few more years than just a year ago, because I am someone that tries to achieve and excel no matter what I'm doing. And, when I was in the corporate setting, it was climbing to the top of the corporate career and getting to that next level or that next promotion. And then running small businesses, it was, getting to a certain level of success and then getting the team to be like a well-oiled machine. It was like milestones. But as I continued to thrive for that environment, somewhere in there, I became a mom. And once that happened, I struggled really hard with my identity and who I was. And for a bit, I thought becoming a mom meant, well, at the young age that I was, I have to give up who I am. So let me shelf her and be a mom. But I didn't even know what that looked like. And I didn't really have, I did have resources that could help me and people, but I'm not someone that likes to ask for help, because of just me always feeling like I have to lead. So I have to have my ducks in a row. So let me just put my head down and keep going. And so after doing that for so long and my son growing, I kind of came to a point where I was living a life I wasn't happy with. And I was constantly wishing my life was something different, but I didn't think something different was possible. I only knew what I knew. And there's that saying is so true, where you don't know what you don't know until you know. And as cliche as it is, it's accurate. And I didn't know that life could be different. I thought with how much I struggled financially, even though career-wise I had success, I didn't see the financial gains that I felt like I should have had with the milestones that I had reached at a young age. So I kept feeling like, well, maybe it's in a few years that I put in my time at this one job that maybe I'll get the financial gains that I need, because, you're going to get that 2% raise and eventually that's going to be enough, but it really never is. And so I guess a year ago, I just was looking for something that, like a glimmer of hope, that maybe the stirring inside me telling me that I want more to life can still be true, even though I was too afraid to dream or hope or kind of let my spirits get up because they had been down for so long. And for someone that, is going to hear this, that might be crazy, because that doesn't mean that I led a negative life. I was still positive on the outside. I was still thriving. I was still hitting success everywhere else, but on the inside, it wasn't aligning correct. And I had a lot of guilt. And that, I guess, was something that normal people have, but I didn't know what to do with. And there was a lot of me that I didn't know who I was enough. I thought there was parts of me that I guess I had to change. And that was exhausting. And when I learned that, oh, that's the way I am, now how do I leverage that? That was one of the most freeing lessons that you helped bring to fruition, when you kind of helped me figure out kind of the DNA of how I'm written. And that was just incredible, and something that I think will be one of those milestone pivotal moments that definitely drew a line in the sand and helped launch me into the next direction.
That's so awesome. That's a point that I want to hit on. Actually, there's two things in what you just said. Number one, something that I've talked about in episodes recently, as I've, kind of let the cat out of the bag about this concept of life design and the fact that I'm, putting some programming out there and actually making this more of a formal offering. Something that I've mentioned is that the design thinking, or the human-centered design component of this, it is the exact same process that's used to create some of the most amazing products that people love. The Instant Pot was created in this same design process. And that involves one of the first, or not necessarily first temporally, but like a very important foundation is getting to know the human who will ultimately be, or the humans in the case of the Instant Pot, who will ultimately be the users of the product. And in the case of life design, it's actually much more simple than that. There's only one human. Like, you're the only person who's living your life. Sure, you have, in your case, you have, a spouse and a kid, and like there's friends, and you have other business colleagues and that type of thing, but they're not living your life. They have their own gig going on, right? You are the only person who we need to really get to know. And once we do that, and through the process of getting to know you, it takes about 5 seconds. And people probably already have this idea about you right now. It takes about 5 seconds to realize that you are an extremely driven, extremely capable, very strong leading type of person. And so thinking about that, there's situations where that's going to work and you're going to thrive and do an amazing job. And then there's situations where it's super not going to work. And it was interesting because, there were elements of both of those things going on in your life, and you could totally see why there might have been some friction points. The other thing I want to hit on, and I'm wondering if we can go here next, is you talked about, you started to navigate into the direction of your own self-worth. Like, what did you think you were worth? What did you think you were capable of? I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more specifically about that, because that's something that is absolutely critically important in this process as well.
Yeah. It was probably about 8 years ago I first took a salaried position, and at that first time it was like, oh, this is cool. I'm like a big girl now. I've got this salaried job. Like, you don't really know what that looks like. And I'm not going to say that it looks like a specific thing, but I do know one of the things that over the years of then having a salaried position, because up until a year ago, or up until about 6 months ago, I've remained at salary. So that salary position provided a lot of comfort. You knew what you were getting every single month, no matter what. It didn't matter if you put in X amount of time. It didn't matter if you didn't put in enough time. That pay was going to be there. And there was nothing you could do to create anything more. And I guess over the time I went for promotions that were pretty well paying. And when I was getting ready for the next promotion, I didn't feel like the pay was worth the sacrifice. So I decided to turn away from that. And one of my beliefs at the time was that, holy cow, if I take this high paying job at this young age, how am I ever going to get out of it and find another job that's paying as well as this? It was such a limited, scarce mindset. And I don't know where it came from. It just was there. And I dodged it like it was a fireball coming at me like Miley Cyrus on a wrecking ball. I just was like, don't want it. Not a chance. Nope. So that ended up turning into me being okay taking less pay for something that was supposed to provide more time back into my life. Because at this time I had identified that, I wanted more time with my son. I didn't want to work 50 to 60 hours for my career when there wasn't a way for me to put my hands in and really change my financial situation and then see it impact the business situation. So I just kind of all of a sudden, what I thought was once exciting years ago, I suddenly felt like I was in a box and like a caged lion. And I am not someone that can really ever be caged. Tell me not to do something and I'm probably going to do it just to smite you because I don't want someone to put rules on me. I'm just a little feisty like that. But I guess kind of then when I took the pay cut and realized it was kind of for the same job, just different parameters, I then kind of started to draw lines okay, here's what we agreed upon. I'm going to hold you to them. Here's where we're at. But truly the industry and the career demanded more. And I had to decide, well, am I okay with putting in more? Can I make more? Am I okay asking to make more if there's going to be more responsibility? And that was all new territory to me. And for a little bit there, I didn't feel like, everyone in their career is going to have that point in time where they have to ask for a potential raise or they're going to get a job offer and they're going to have to counter offer it because it's not the salary that they want, and that's going to be scary and hard. And this was kind of the first year I've had to dabble in that. And not knowing your worth, you kind of just accept anything, thinking it's good, feeling like you're going to make it work no matter what, because that must be what you're valued at. And when I look back at like all of those promotions I was going for, I was going for it based on approval of several other leaders in the industry. I wasn't going for it based on approval of like knowing my own abilities and knowing my own worth. So kind of living for other people's opinions like that helped me not know who I was enough to kind of like stand my ground on my own life, because I kind of felt almost like I was being bounced between waves, because you could have five good, in retail where I was at this point in time where I'm getting specific, you have like 5 to 7 leaders above you, and half of them could think positively of you, half of them could think negatively. And when you're constantly being like ping pong between all of them, you suddenly don't know you, or, I let the chatter get in my head too much to not know me. So starting back into getting like the end of my retail career, because I'm never getting back into that, so it is the end of that. That's really when I started to challenge, well, wait a second, I do know a lot more than you're letting me feel like I know. And I had to start to fight a lot of people's opinions. And almost every leader above me was several years older. I was like one of the youngest managers in that industry. And I feel like that kind of put me in this other realm of like, well, you don't know enough because you haven't had as much life experience. But the life experience I've had has been very rich, whether or not you know that on the surface or not, So getting away from that and into an area of someone showing me that, oh my gosh, you can create income. You don't just have to trade time for money, and there's other avenues out there, I guess was a big win. And when I started to be okay knowing my worth and getting proud of that, I could put a dollar sign on myself and then not start giving people discounts. Like, I guess once you know your worth, you're not going to settle and give someone else a discount. And that's when you really get to put that stake in the ground and then start to design your life in the exact way that we're talking. Because that was something that this program helped me do. And it's kind of crazy when you don't know your worth, but so many people out there are struggling. And it's crazy to me a year later, because I'm now very proud of who I am, and I now know my strengths and my weaknesses. And, no one's going to make me feel ashamed of my weaknesses, because part of that is exactly why I am who I am today. And I think all of it's good. And, we're going into 2019, and I'm not about like new year, new me. I'm like same me, leveling up. It's just going to be an upgraded version. I'll introduce myself again a year later just because I'm going to re-level up. And that's kind of like what I'm looking forward to, instead of feeling like I have to hit certain milestones in a career to feel successful. Like, I'm redefining success. And I really didn't know that was possible because I only knew one way. And I guess I could go on forever about this, but I'll let you kind of jump in.
No, this was perfect, because there's 2 things that you're talking about that are so critical to this process. One of them is, you mentioned, is as you started to know your own worth, and as you started to believe that you were worth more and believe that you had value, meaning capability, and you had skills that people should pay for, like they should pay adequately for, and not instead of, you working at a discounted rate and then having to work more and more and feel stressed and all of that. That self-identity piece is such a huge aspect to the way that I like to approach life design. There's a number of other groups out there who do a really great job in this arena. Stanford University has a group who does life design. They've actually put out a book. It's wonderful. Love the book. Absolutely. But where I think they fall short is they don't take into account as much the aspects of psychology that, you can know exactly what to do, but if those psychological barriers are there, meaning for you, it was an identity and a value barrier. Your identity did not allow you to make more money than you did. Like, I remember we had a conversation where, I was talking about saying like, okay, I want you to, after we talk today, go back and really think about how you would fill in the blank if you said, I'm the type of person who makes what? How much money? Like, what's your number? because everybody has a number, right? Like I'm the type of person who makes how much money. And isn't it funny that if you got laid off from your job, the very next job you would get, you're going to make about that much money. Maybe you'll get a little raise, but it won't be like, you're not going to double. Like people don't do that. And it's funny because somebody who would fill in the blank with the word or with the number 60,000 will continually look for and get jobs where they make $60,000. Somebody who that number is 600,000, they will continually look for and get and make 600,000. And some of it, yes, is experience and degrees and that type of thing. But two people with the exact same training, the exact same experience, depending upon what that identity is, their take-home pay can be so different. So you can say all along, no, you have an entrepreneurial spirit. No, you belong in this type of job. No, this is so aligned to your capabilities and look how much more you could make. If it's outside of your identity for one reason or another, you're not going to let yourself get it. You're just not. So like that psychology piece to me is so important because you can tell people all day long what the perfect solution is. You could have the most perfect design. And if the person feels like, nope, it's not for me, they're not going to do it.
Yeah, no, it's huge. And, that was pivotal. And I'm glad that you remember it because like that question, I was like, wait, it was, and this might be silly to some people and that's great if it is, but I mean, like we had a conversation where we were talking and I was like, well, if I do look for a new career, I have X, Y, and Z planned. And you were like, well, you just tell them you have the time off. And I was like, I can do that.
Yeah, literally. Okay. So the background on that, you were saying like, if I get a new job, what am I going to do about this vacation that I have coming up? Like, I think you had already bought the plane tickets or something like that.
Yes.
And I'm like, when you accept the job, you just tell them, hey guys, oops, sorry, didn't know I was going to be applying for and getting this job, but I've already got this thing booked. You need to give me this time off. Like, I just know ahead of time that I need it. It was like shocking to you that you were valuable enough of a person to be able to go in and make a demand like that. And to other people, again, this is human-centered. So you're human, you, one human, are probably very different from somebody else who has different blocks. But the point is, like, we all have our own. That may seem easy to somebody else, but to us, holy cow, they stop you in your tracks.
Yeah. And I realized that that's how I lived my life in my careers. I would sacrifice my identity a little bit here, a little bit there to conform to what like the business demanded because I was so for whatever the business needed that you did lose your identity on like in my own, in that sense. And then motherhood, of course, rocked it a little bit further. But, knowing like, this year for 2019, I did something that I've never done before, and it was because of the activities that we did. And I got to put out, okay, I'm the type of person that makes X amount per year, and it's on my vision board. Like I'm looking up at it and the numbers there. And so I drew that in the center of a piece of paper, and then I started to web design it. Like, okay, well, let me go back to my high school days of when you drew the circles and the lines, and I started to fill in the blanks. Well, this source of income is going to bring me X amount of dollars this year. This source is. So I got to figure out only a few $1,000s more for 2019 of like how I'm going to bridge that gap. But it was your shifting of my perception that helped with that big time. And it didn't suddenly feel as hard as like in the past, asking for $40,000 for a job. I was like, that's going to be so hard to get. But I kept myself at that level, and jumping up to 65,000 was like hard. I was like, well, technically I'm skilled enough for that. Like that should be probably like a base pay. And I didn't like, that was almost hard, but it was also because my financial like mindset was terrible. I didn't even know you could have a financial mindset, let alone like a financial relationship, with yourself. And the mindset I had was complete scarcity. And I definitely like held on to my financial struggles and like the financial burdens that I had so tight that it restricted any change. And it was your refreshing perceptive change that was able to let that go and definitely allow some room to breathe in those areas. And that's where some of the creativity has definitely improved big time in my life.
Friends, I am interrupting this podcast episode to ask you some very important questions. How joyful and aligned does your day-to-day life feel? Do you feel driven and passionate? Do you feel truly alive, like you're actively and intentionally participating in your own life? Or are you sort of just going through the motions? Are you working for the weekend, and going to work, and coming home, and passively letting life happen to you? The hard truth is that you don't have the luxury of time to waste. When I was in graduate school, I was doing just that, going through the motions. It all changed one day. After having lost my dad to cancer and having battled the blindness and paralysis of multiple sclerosis myself, I asked myself an important question. What would my dad give for the day that I just wasted? What would I have given when I was blind and paralyzed from MS? What would I have given for the day that I just wasted? From that point forward, I began living with intention, urgency, passion, joy. I began living by design, not by default. And I want the same for you. Because of that, I'm offering an absolutely free life blueprinting webinar during the first 2 weeks of January, just in time for the new year. During this webinar, I'll guide you through a life design experience that combines the powerful fields of psychology and human-centered design. When applied to your own life, the techniques that I've been developing can help you gain clarity on the areas of your life that you want to change and begin to steer your life into alignment with who you truly are. I've kept this information and these techniques bottled up for way too long, and I'm so excited to share them with you. Stop over to aprilseifert.com/webinar to register, or just click the link in this episode description. Remember, you are either living by design or you're living by default, and you get to choose. Join me, and I'll teach you the techniques that you can use to live like your life depends on it, because it does. That makes me so happy. The other cool thing you said is about, starting 2019, you're not starting it as, new year, new me, I'm going to be a totally different person. You, through this process, the other thing that I think is so critical and so eye-opening for people is the degree of self-awareness that you hone as your whole purpose in life, in a chunk of this, life design process, is to get to know yourself at an intimate level, like sub-bullets of sub-bullets of sub-bullets, like the question why 100 times in a row to get to the heart of what is it that makes you tick? What is it that drives you crazy? And what other situations drive you crazy? And what's the theme in those situations? What do they have in common? Like, that's the thing you need to start avoiding. So there's a way to crystallize that vapor. And once you do that, that self-awareness is priceless, because then going forward, like you mentioned, like you just know that for you, and this won't be for everyone, but for you, you found it difficult to trade the ability to grow, like to trade the ability to make as much money as you wanted to. It was hard to trade that for the comfort of a continuous salary.
Yeah.
And for other people, they're like, are you crazy? I would kill to just have something dependable. For someone else, that might not be the case. But for you, you didn't like to be limited and you didn't like to be caged, was the word you used. Mm-hmm. Going forward, that gives you a framework now to make future decisions like, this opportunity that's in front of me, while it looks like it's a lot of money, that smells a bit of a cage. And I think I'll probably last about 6 months there before I'm going to start to get pissed off.
Yeah.
That self-awareness piece is so huge and people take it for granted. Like it's not important work to do to completely get to know yourself, but it's so important.
Oh, absolutely. I think that, I learned at a young age what emotional intelligence was. And I think that is such an area for everybody to go into, because when you have that and you do know yourself, you really are able to proactively respond versus react when situations happen. That's not to say that you don't have your moments where you want to be gangster and get crap done and then you want to cry at the same time, but you can still be at it with such a different perspective because you know yourself, your abilities, your capabilities, you know what you can control and not control. And that gives you really the freedom that you need to decide what you want to let your emotions get involved in and not get involved in. And it's a freedom. It's definitely a freedom. It's not easy, but once the skill's learned, it really gets better over time. And that's where you can take full control to make the decisions that I've made in the past year without worrying about as much fear, because there was definitely a lot of fear in me, circa 1 year ago compared to right now. And more like, I guess now I'm kind of more, well, let me just try it. And now if it doesn't work, I don't care, because I'm going to figure something else out, and I'll keep doing that until I do find what works. And I guess there's no fear of failure, because I now know that I'm like not going to quit. I'm not going to give up. I know what my vision and my mission is. And it's just a matter of showing up in the right time versus like being like, oh my gosh, I got to achieve this by this time, or I'm just going to be done. There's just not that anymore. I don't feel like I have to get somewhere at a certain time. I just know that I can design life and know it's going to happen in the right time, in the right way, as long as I keep taking actions, I guess, and not reacting to the bumps, because you're not ever going to get through life without bumps. You just kind of got to embrace that.
Totally. And what you're talking about in terms of trying things and then sometimes it doesn't go well and you try something else and you continue to go, that's exactly the iterative process of it. It's experimentation and, small, sometimes big changes. You've had big changes over the past year, and I want to get to that next. It's making changes and looking at, okay, does this look and feel better? Does this look and feel better? Does this look and feel better? You're like incrementing and incrementing and incrementing until you get to a point where you're like, damn, this is really different than it was before. And you made those changes with all of that self-awareness in mind and with that whole framework in mind. So you're always inching in the right direction. It's just, is this the right path to get me in that direction? I'm not sure. I'm going to just keep trying and trying and trying and know that I'm going in the right direction.
Yes.
It's just awesome. So let's talk a little bit about what has happened since then, because the vacation, you went on it. I saw it on social media. It was beautiful. So you made it to the vacation. You've also done some other amazing things over the course of the past, like say 6 months or so. So I'm wondering if you can talk just a little bit about, once you've got this framework in place and once you've got this belief built and the psychological barriers are removed, where do you go from there?
Well, I mean, the upfront answer, I'm like, you just kind of figure it out. But in realness, so I went on my vacation. We had a girls' weekend out in North Carolina, and that's something that we're making an annual thing. And then I ended up starting a new part-time job to leave the current full-time career that I had been in for the last 2 years. So when I had decided that it was time for me to be done with that, and I came to terms with like all of the emotional wheel that was, and turned in my resignation, it ended up being a great thing. And it just ever since I turned that resignation in, even though there was a lot of fear of, well, I guess they could terminate me right away if they don't, want to work with me through my resignation date. And I guess I have to be okay with that. And then what do you do to get yourself ready to be okay with that? It's not like you just hand the letter in and pray that all is going to be well. You set yourself up to succeed. And something I had done was taken a part-time job that allowed me freedom and flexibility that I was craving without feeling so anchored to it, I guess, because that was something I was trying to get away from. So before I turned in my resignation, I guess I had applied for a job that I had really had my heart set on. And I was like, I really want this. Like, this is perfect. I could see, like, because I knew my worth, I was like almost on fire over the fact that I could help bring so much value to this business. And the interview went amazing. Like, there was good vibes amongst us all. And I ended up not getting the job. And that was great, but I didn't want to upfront see that. I was like, kind of like a little salty, but then I was like, well, there's got to be a reason for it. So let me try to see the reason instead of, react to not getting my way. And that was the first time I probably didn't get a job that I went for. So there was a little bit of that I had to deal with. And it wasn't big, because I ended up realizing that if I would have taken that job, I would have settled for, I would have gave someone a discount again, because we weren't agreeing with a salary, for the year. Even though we were agreeing upon a lot of things, we weren't agreeing upon that. And if I would have taken another financial piggyback on what I thought that I then was worth, it would have kept me on the same path that I was trying to get off of. And then I was also able to identify that if I if I took this position, I actually would have then put my head down and got laser focused on their businesses instead of ever giving myself the chance to learn what can I do with my own strengths, how can I get creative with it. So it was like a huge blessing that that door never opened, even though I thought that that's what I wanted. But I wanted it more because it was still hard for me to realize that I had to be the hero of my story. And I was kind of hoping someone else was going to save me because that'd be so much easier than doing it for myself. So I guess fast forward after the resignation and I found this part-time job, I then did just kind of be like, well, this is what I've got. I'm doing this then, kind of not going to let you say no to me type of a thing. So, just last month, I made a decision to go help some people out in South Dakota open up a business. They called me and reached out and were like, hey, you've done this. I think you can provide value here. What do you think about you coming out here? This is what we're working with. This is what we've got. What do you think? And I was like, oh my gosh, heck yes. It wasn't even a question. And after I said yes, probably a few days after I said yes, there was a little bit of self-doubt that crept in. Like, am I capable of this? Like, am I sure I can do this? What if I go out there and I'm like not a help at all? Like, what if they're hoping for something more than what I am? Like, just kind of ping ponged with all of those what if questions. And I kind of just shook it, like, shake your head off. Like, no, absolutely not. Like, not going there. I'm just going to trust that this is working, because seriously, when I go back to the fact that once the resignation was in, it was like as soon as a door closed, another one opened, and having trust in the process of the universe kind of doing that has been amazing, because I no longer like kind of psycho focus on the how. I just decide, what is it that I want? Let me try to get like a little bit like of an A to an F to an M to a Z in the alphabet, not necessarily A, B, C, D, because part of that has to fill in on its own, because there's so much of life you can't control that you don't even know what's going to present itself, an hour from now. So I just took the leap of faith and went out there, and it was like a 9-hour drive by myself. It was amazing. I had playlists set up, I had books set up, and it was an amazing week. And I ended up going out there to help someone else with their business, but I got so much more from that life experience that I came back with such a full cup, and we're already planning, when can I go back out there and help do like a trainer boot camp. And, I check in with them once a week just to make sure that they're doing good. But along the way, I definitely had some people that were like, how did you know that you could do that? And after, like, when I didn't have those what ifs in my head, it was almost like, what do you mean? Like, I've been running other people's businesses for 15 years. Like, that's a decade and a half milestone that I can proudly say I have. It's been on my resume. I've just never really known my resume's worth or my skills worth. And so to me, it was like, what do you mean? Why do I question myself? Like, to me, it should be a no-brainer now, because I now know my skills and know that I can provide value. And just because you run into people that don't see your value, that doesn't mean that you're not valuable. Like, not everybody is going to see the same colors as you, and that's okay. But for a little bit there, I did live with those other people's opinions. Like, their opinion must be right because they're not happy. And I got to shift that over this last year to know, well, you don't have to agree with me, but in some areas, I'm absolutely right. This is what I've been doing. And if you don't want to believe me or not, I don't necessarily have to worry about that with some things. Because I know the skills that I bring to the table, and that definitely just was a change in literally 1 year.
I love it. Oh my God, that's so cool. So somewhere listening to this episode, there is a person who is in a situation similar to what you were in before. Like, it's a person who has their own psychological barriers, their own frustrations and friction points in their life. What's your advice to that person? Like, talk directly to that person about what's possible.
Ooh, change is possible when you can identify that something needs to change. As soon as you take responsibility for that, if you don't have to know the how, you don't have to care about the why right now, you don't have to worry about what you're going to do. But if you know inside of you that something is going to like something needs to change, or life should be different, it's so true that if you ignore that and you just try to carry on, that knock is going to get louder, and it is going to bring emotions to you that are really only going to push you in that direction. So I think that if I could teach somebody anything, it would be to start to listen to that sooner and to find somebody that can help you level up because there are so many people out there that can help you, whether it's a therapist or a life coach or a mentor. Anybody out there can be of value, whether, kind of who you need might be specific. But if you look at everybody out there at the top of their industry, they all have somebody to go to. If you're a brain surgeon, you are not going to perform brain surgery on yourself when you need help. You have somebody in your industry that you can look up to, that you can help reach up to, that's going to help you with whatever that is. If you're an amazing hairstylist, I don't care how skilled you are, you're not going to do your own hair. You have some other boss babe doing your hair for you. So, if you're an amazing friend, make sure you have amazing friends that can pull you out of like the tough times. Because me finding you, so you're like my life coach to me, me finding that, you helped me see that the stuff that I was dealing with was not only truly hard, but it could be changeable and I could take responsibility. Had I not met you, I don't know when I would have learned some of the lessons that I've learned. So I guess once you identify that internal conflict, I'm telling people just to embrace it and raise your hand. Because I think so much of us believe that we have to do all of this by ourselves when so many of us deal with the same struggles. And if we only ever opened up a little bit more or reached out a little bit more, I think we'd all realize how human we truly each are. And the communities that we're all yearning for in like this day and age, despite all of the social media, I think that truly comes to fruition when you start to just reach your hand out and be that source of a light for someone else. And it could start with just reading books until you know where to go next. It could start with simply signing up for your webinars and taking your course. I mean, it could just be something small, but you got to get in a growth environment. You've got to have that desire to change, and you've got to be willing to start to take responsibility for a lot of things in your life. Because once you identify what you're responsible for, that's when you can start changing those pain point areas. And that's exactly what that map was able to help, I guess, do for me.
I'm like over here cheering. I'm so excited. That's so awesome. I love it. And not only do people feel like they need to do it by themselves, like it doesn't occur to people that like, this is the example I always give. If you decided that you wanted to do, maybe your New Year's resolution for 2019 was that you wanted to do your first triathlon, right? And maybe you feel like, okay, I can probably run without killing myself, and I can probably bike without killing myself, but like I super can't swim that far. You would hire somebody to teach you how to swim in a heartbeat. You wouldn't even question it. But something as precious as your freaking life, like your life, we're not willing to work on. So people feel like they need to do it by themselves, but then two, it's almost like people think that it's frivolous or it's not a worthwhile way to spend their time because they think they should just know how to do it already, or it should just be clear. And it isn't. Like, it isn't clear. To me, it is some of the most worthwhile investment, whether it's time or money or whatever it is, but like time is a big investment. It's the most worthwhile investment you can make to get to know yourself and figure out what that framework is that your life operates the best way inside of, and then learn how to apply it. Like, go forth and apply it so that you have this going forward. If your life shifts as much as yours has in the last year, that's priceless and amazing. And it's hard to explain to people how different it feels on the other side when you have done the work and you have made the investment and you've decided that you're worth it and decided that your life is worth it.
So true. I wouldn't even be able to put a price point on the life experiences that I've been able to gain in literally 3 months short time, because I technically put resignation in August and was completely out of that career maybe only 5 or 6 weeks ago. So, I mean, it definitely was priceless, and I wouldn't change it for the world. Absolutely not. And I cannot wait to see what 2019 brings, just because I know there's going to be highs and lows, and I can't wait to see kind of how I get through them all, because I already know I'm going to get through them all. I've gotten through the worst of 100 days that I've had passed behind me, so you'll survive everything that comes your way. And I'm just very much looking forward to see how I get through it now, knowing that the things that come my way are not like huge burdens and mountains that I don't think I can conquer. I'm just kind of like, well, what do we got to do now? Because this isn't going to get in my way anymore. So it's a matter of how do we get through it or around it.
Oh my God, I love this. I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to chat today. I'm so grateful that you were willing to come on and share your story so openly with people, because the more people that I've reached with the podcast who have reached out to me or hopped on webinars or messaged me afterward, it's so huge. Like, this work is something that I was so passionate about before, but I feel like it's grown tenfold just in the past month alone, just from hearing, from people who have gotten more exposed to it and been able to see the shift that it can make. So I so appreciate you just being willing to share the shifts that you've experienced in your life, because I know that it motivates other people to feel like, maybe in some way they could do the same thing with whatever their life circumstances are. So
Absolutely.
Courtney, honestly, thank you so much for being on today. It was just so great to reconnect. I mean, number one, but then number two, just to be able to share everything that you've been through with my audience.
Absolutely. Thank you for everything that you've done this past year, my lady. I cannot wait to see how many lives you change in 2019. You're just getting started.
Oh my God, it's going to be awesome. Can't wait. It'll be a great year for both of us. All right, everyone. That was the wonderful, the inspiring, the incredible Courtney Mott. And I really hope you enjoyed that interview. I want to call out a few things from that interview, because I think Courtney's story is one that so many of us can relate to. And I want to make sure that we call out a few things. Number one, our self-identity, our notion of who we are, it dictates so incredibly much in our lives. It dictates the types of things our brain starts to look for, right? Like, I talked about it a lot on previous episodes of the podcast, where I've, spoken about how our brain has this incredible ability to goal seek. Like, it'll look for things in our environment that it is primed to look for. And our identity is one of those things that primes our brain to look for things in our environment. It's going to look for things that are in congruence with who we are. So one of the most important things that you can do is really get to know what that self-identity is and determine whether there are pieces of it that need to be shifted. So in the case of Courtney's story, her self-identity included this notion around her self-worth that her self-worth was much lower than it really should have been. I would wager to guess that that's the case with most of us. So as she and I spoke about that sentence, right? Like, I'm the type of person who makes how much money. Over the course of our time together, I encouraged her to double or triple what that number is. I'm like, no, that's not your number anymore. Your new number is this crazy number. Because her skill level and the value she could provide to the world was so much more in alignment with that larger number, she just couldn't see it. And once you get there, and once you start to let that sink in and accept it as a part of your new identity, your brain will start to goal seek in the direction of this new identity that you have. You just have to be open and willing to accept new information into that identity. And the first step there is understanding what your current concept of your self-identity is. So self-awareness and self-knowledge is so critically important. Next, Courtney did something that so many of us are afraid to do. She decided to take responsibility for the situation that she's in. She looked around at her life and she said, you know what? There are areas that I'm not happy with, and I'm going to take responsibility for those areas and I'm going to work on them. And that notion of taking responsibility is so critically important. I harp on it so often, but it's because it's something that very few people are willing to do. In fact, just recently, and I'm not going to name the account, but a very large Instagram account that I follow and someone who I really, really adore had a post recently that said their happiness going forward is not up to them. They don't like these fake quote unquote posts on Instagram about how your happiness is up to you, etc., etc. And all I could think of was, holy cow, are you relinquishing power? Like, who is your happiness up to then? If it's not up to you, who's responsible for it? And how long are you going to wait around for them to come and make you happy? And what if they don't ever come? Oh my God, like that is so much power that you're willing to give up, power that you don't have to give up. So it's something that is very difficult to do, to take responsibility for your happiness and look at those friction points or design challenges in your life and actively work on them. But when you do, you can experience the shifts that Courtney experienced. It is amazing what people can do when they put their mind, to it and focus on trying to make themselves happy. And the last thing that I want to call out is that sometimes people look at, and I'm going to go even broader than life design right now. I'm going to say personal development. Sometimes people look at personal development work and they sort of roll their eyes and think that it's this, dumb new agey thing or something that people who watch Oprah do or whatever. They kind of roll their eyes at it and think that it is this frivolous, stupid thing that people don't need. You shouldn't have to do this. Who are you and how bad is your life that you have to go do this? And the thing is, your life is the most precious thing that you have. The time that you have right now is the most non-renewable resource on the planet. You are not getting more of it. You are not getting another chance at life. This is the one life, the one shot that you have. And because of that, any work, any intentional work that you can do to try to make that experience a more joyful one, a more aligned one that allows you to move forward without regrets, the more you can do that, that is the most important work that you can possibly do. The work to make sure that your life experience is incredible. Because when I think about the research, and I've talked about it a few times, the research about people at the end of their life and them regretting the things they didn't do and regretting not being themselves and regretting not allowing themselves to be happy, that is heartbreaking. And I never want anybody to be in that situation. And life design, and specifically even broader than that, personal development work can help you avoid some of that. I'm not going to say it's like a panacea and it's going to cure all of it, but man, it helps you get a lot closer. When you take responsibility for your life, you figure out where the things are that are going wrong, and you intentionally work to change them and make them better. It's incredible what can happen. So you guys, I want to encourage you to take the time. Like, you owe it to yourself. You are good enough. You are worth it. Your one life and your one shot is absolutely worth it. Please do the work. Please go out there and go after the biggest, boldest, most vibrant, incredible life that you can, because you absolutely deserve it. Thank you so much for listening this week. This week was so near and dear to my heart. Please, please, please stand up and cheer for Courtney. She is absolutely incredible, and go get it yourself. Seriously. Join me on my webinar, or follow me on Instagram and follow me in my Facebook group, Women Inspired, and I'll be teaching this type of work and these tools and techniques in there. But please apply them to your life, because you absolutely deserve it. All right, have an awesome week. I'll see you next week.
Before we close out today, I want to say thank you to my producer, Cameron Hill, and to my incredible sponsor, Modern Well. If you want to learn more about how you can reach your goals in a one-of-a-kind work-life community, visit www.modernwell.co. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else who might benefit from this inspiring message. And if you have a moment, click the link in the episode description to leave me a rating and a review on iTunes. It would mean so much to me. Finally, I want to remind you that it is absolutely possible to live a happy, fulfilling life, even in spite of all of the chaos and demands we all experience. Sign up at aprilseifert.com to gain access to tools that will help you do just that. I have carefully created and curated a set of tools that combine the powerful fields of psychology and design thinking to help you intentionally create a fulfilling, happy life you love. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and until next week, stay inspired.